Welcome to part 6 of our analysis of the February 2014 family law essay. Here are the facts. You want to look at the call of the question, read through the facts of the essay, pull out your issues, and then begin your analysis and writing out what the rules are and the analysis and your conclusion. Issue 6 is the final issue that the essay writer found and addressed in this particular essay prompt. This last issue is how the assets should be distributed. Now, this is a really broad issue because there are several different assets that each require individual consideration. However, they're all under the same major issue. So the issue statement is how the assets should be distributed. The writer then goes on to list out what the rule is in Florida regarding distribution of assets. Florida utilizes equitable distribution. And it lists out the factors that will apply in this case for determining how the distribution will be equitable. And then they list out at the beginning of their analysis what the assets to consider include. Here they address the $50,000 in the bank account, the house, and the life insurance. Each one of those assets is going to have a mini analysis and a mini conclusion. All three of them are still falling under the major issue of how the assets should be distributed, and they're all falling under the major rule of what Florida means by equitable distribution. First, the $50,000 bank account. They look at the analysis and they look at the fact that in the rules it states that something that has been given as a gift or a trust or device to a specific person belongs to that specific person. Therefore, unless they have agreed, that specific person has agreed to share that with another person. So it's here that if Wendy and Harry had agreed to make it a joint account, then it would belong to both of them. But there's no indication that they agreed to do that. Therefore, the mini conclusion for the $50,000 bank account is that it doesn't go into the equitable distribution pool and Wendy gets to keep it in its entirety. Next, they talk about the house. And the analysis here is a little bit complicated. They talk about the fact that the house was purchased for $165,000 with $15,000 down. They talk about the fact that it was paid for using Harry's salary. And they say that the $15,000 down, because he purchased the house 2 months before they got married, is Harry's. So the $15,000 as part of the overall value of the house is Harry's. The remaining balance of what they purchased it for, however, the $150,000, is a little bit more complicated. True, the mortgage was paid entirely from his salary, and Wendy didn't contribute financially to paying that mortgage. However, as acting as the homemaker and taking care of their children, Wendy allowed Harry to work and earn the money to pay the mortgage, and so this writer argues, indirectly contributed to the mortgage payments. And that's how they determined that the $150,000 value of what they paid for the house after they got married should be considered marital property and equitably divided. However, as you may have noticed, the house isn't listed as being worth $165,000. The house is listed as being worth $400,000. So you're going to ask, well, what about that other $245,000? Should that be equitably distributed? The rule is that if Wendy had contributed somehow to the house by improving it or some other such thing that caused that increase in value, then she may be deserving of part of that money. However, the facts here just state that the value's gone up, and it's most likely due to market changes. Because that increase was not due to her contribution, Harry is entitled to that value. So their conclusion is $150,000 of the house should be equitably divided, whereas the remaining $250,000 should belong to Harry. And their conclusion states that the house could be split, or sold rather, and then the proceeds split accordingly, or one spouse could retain it and pay off the non-staying spouse's portion. The last thing that they addressed as far as an asset was the life insurance. You may remember that in the facts of the essay, Wendy wanted to remain Harry's life insurance beneficiary. However, as the analysis states, by virtue of the divorce, Wendy will, by operation of law, no longer remain the beneficiary of his life insurance policy. Essentially, those are will substitutes, which terminate by law upon divorce. Your conclusion is very simple. She shouldn't remain the beneficiary of his life insurance policy. And so, as you can see, we addressed all of the major assets that were under scrutiny in the essay, and each of them had the same issue, they had the same rule, and then they had a mini analysis and a mini conclusion for each of them. Finally, here are the essay facts. And as you can imagine, this one has a few more facts highlighted as pertinent to the issue. However, as you can also imagine, that issue was longer because there were 3 different assets that we were discussing. So here, this first part that's highlighted talks about that's where we got that $50,000 in the separate bank account. And the cost of the house, the $400,000 beach house. And then it talks about the fact that he bought it 2 months before their wedding, how much he paid for it, when the mortgage was paid off. The 15-year mortgage was paid off, which means that it was paid off within the 16 years that they were married. And then it talks about the fact that he claims sole ownership of the house and half of the bank account. She claims half the house, the bank account, and she wants to stay his life insurance beneficiary. So those are the things that the essay writer needed to address when they were answering this essay prompt.